There are many Bitcoin proponents and many more that see real value in a blockchain technology. So we enlisted the help of our friends at UR Tech to look into this further and help explain the good, the bad, and the ugly of this new cryptocurrency world. Just to set it up briefly, we're going to explain the three terms: blockchain, Bitcoin, and NFTs. So a blockchain is simply an algorithm, in other words, a formula that keeps its results stored on millions of computers around the globe, making it virtually impossible to fake. You might have also heard of this as being called the distributed ledger. What is Bitcoin in simple terms? Well, Bitcoin is just a digital token. It's not a physical thing, it's not paper, it's not backed by any government like a dollar or a peso, and it's created using powerful computers that solve a complex calculation. And the results of that calculation are stored, you guessed it, on the blockchain, on these millions of computers. The Bitcoin formula is available to everyone, so anyone can use their computers to mine for them. The issue is that the formula gets harder as more Bitcoin are mined, making the next Bitcoin harder to find than the previous one. And finally, what are NFTs in simple terms? Well, NFTs are nothing more than digital tokens. Just like Bitcoin, they're stored on the blockchain, and that allows artists to assign that token, that digital number, to their art, which makes verification of their ownership easy, and it also adds some value. Art, strangely enough, has been defined as digital graphics, photos, and even a screenshot of the world's first Twitter post from Jack Dorsey just sold for $2.9 million. And in case you're wondering, NFT is just the acronym for non-fungible token. And all that means is that it's a highly trustworthy provenance, as they say in the art world. What's good about the blockchain, Bitcoin, and NFTs? Well, to be sure, the blockchain has some real-world advantages to our traditional ways of storing things like bank records, because anyone, including you, can add their computer to the blockchain. There are millions of computers storing blockchain information, creating Bitcoin, and creating NFTs. To be clear, you could mine Bitcoin on a normal home computer, but because the math is now so hard, you really need dedicated hardware, specifically some pretty high-end video cards these days. So let's think about some real-world benefits of applying the blockchain technology. Think about the chaos that would happen if your bank were to be hacked and all of your bank transactions and histories were wiped out. That would not be funny. While nothing is impossible, it's close to impossible to wipe out a large blockchain like Bitcoin, because it's stored on millions of computers around the world. It's also nearly impossible to fool it, because more than 50% of the computers on the blockchain have to agree on a transaction before it is finalized. Challenging is a serious understatement for even large governments like China or Russia that might want to damage or discredit the blockchain. Another huge advantage of Bitcoin and NFTs on a blockchain is how easy they are to move around. They're just digital transfers. And a really important point here is that we're going to get to the criticisms of blockchain in just a moment, and some of those criticisms will go away in the future because this is a living technology. There are newer, more efficient processes coming out all the time. Ethereum is seen as the leader in those innovations today, so if you're interested in that, look up Ethereum. Okay, let's get on to what's wrong with the blockchain, Bitcoin, and NFTs. If this stuff's so great, why do so many people bash them? Well, firstly, the value is arbitrary. Bitcoins and NFTs are not physical. They have zero intrinsic value. They don't do anything. If you own something as silly as a collectible baseball card, at least you have the piece of paper. And viewing that card might give you and others some pleasure that auction houses can put a value on. In economics, Bitcoins and NFTs and things like that are referenced in the greater fool theory, in which the current owner thinks it is worth what he or she paid for it, only because he or she thinks that someone even stupider than they are will pay more for it in the future. That's a very harsh way to word it, but that's the theory. Secondly, no one is control or responsible. If you have a problem with a blockchain product like Bitcoin or NFT, there's no central body that can work with you to fix it. These tools are decentralized, so there's no group or government oversight. Thirdly, illegal and immoral activities. Because no one is in charge of these records of ownership, and they're just long strings of numbers. Nowhere on the blockchain is there a name and an address field. Bitcoin makes it impossible for the police or even federal governments to trace the source and destination of a transfer. That means if you're a drug dealer or human trafficker or selling state secrets to an enemy government, there isn't a way to prove that you paid or got paid, making prosecution so much harder. Now remember that the famous gangster Al Capone was sent to jail not for murder or extortion, but for income tax fraud. Law enforcement usually tracks down the real bad guys by following the money trail, which really doesn't exist with blockchain products like Bitcoin. Fourthly, mining is very expensive and getting more expensive quite literally every day. It is conventional wisdom that all things digital have a near zero cost. But Bitcoin's math problem is now so complex, the Bitcoin miners must use vast amounts of computing power to find the next coin. And that means that huge amounts of heat are produced, vast amounts of air conditioning are required, and substantial amounts of land are needed to house those computers. But most importantly, giant amounts of electricity are used. All totaled up, Forbes and other reliable sources calculate that the cost of producing a Bitcoin today, a single one, is somewhere around $10,000. Now that depends on the price of the inputs like the electricity in the country and so on and so forth, but that's a good round number. But it doesn't stop there, because every time a Bitcoin is mined or transferred, i.e., when you sell it, buy it, or move it to somebody because you bought something, millions of computers have to update their records at the same time. And that's electricity, cooling, internet costs, and it's conservatively estimated that each one of those costs about $5 a transaction. And there are millions of transactions. We'd like to interject for just a few seconds and ask you to click like, and if you like this type of thing, please click subscribe. Both of those things make a huge difference in the Google algorithm. We mostly talk about electric vehicles, the energy industry, and high technology. And we take on both sides of issues. We try to stick with facts. Thanks. Back to the show. Fifth point, environmental damage. This is one you'll hear about over and over again. Bitcoin miners no longer run out of the basement. They are consuming large warehouses all over the world that could be used for some other productive purpose. But the biggest environmental problem with blockchain currencies like Bitcoin is the absolutely staggering amount of electricity being consumed to power and cool the millions of computers running at 100% CPU and GPU, more specifically here, 24 hours a day. We can give you numbers from reliable sources, but they're so large as to be meaningless to almost everybody. So instead, we'll give you some comparisons. Bitcoin mining alone uses about the same amount of electricity as the entire country of Norway, or the entire country of Sweden, or the entire country of Malaysia, or the entire country of Poland. And it definitely uses more electricity than Argentina, or Switzerland, or the UAE, all just to generate and move around some numbers. Real world part shortages for real industries is the sixth criticism. Because the cost to mine a new Bitcoin is about $10,000 and the price of a Bitcoin today is somewhere around $50,000, there is an insatiable demand for the computer chips that can perform the complex Bitcoin mining operations. This is one of the main reasons for the global computer chip shortage that has idled dozens of major auto factories, limited game console production, turned $200 video cards into $600 video cards. Supply and demand there. Price goes up. It's delayed the new Apple iPhone, and it slowed production of current models. And it's also the reason why my new Dell laptop is on an 8-week back order. The 2021 chip shortage is nothing short of a full-blown crisis in many important industries. For example, General Motors says that because they won't be selling as many vehicles, they will lose $2 billion in profit. Ford said the same thing, except they expect to lose about $2.5 billion in profit. Number 7, costly services. While it costs about $10,000 to mine a new Bitcoin, even cheaper products like NFTs, the art tokens, cost about $100 each. That is not the next to free mindset that most people have when they think about digital products. 8th issue, slow service. Because blockchain products like Bitcoin need to have their changes replicated on millions of computers around the world before they can be fully validated, Bitcoin can only make about 4.5 transactions per second. Compare that to Visa that processes about 1,700 per second on average and can process more than 10,000 per second at peak times like Boxing Day and Black Friday. Number 9, complexity. To even buy a single Bitcoin, you need some sort of a digital wallet, which is not a simple app that you just download and register. It's complex. And that gets to number 10, which is they're easy to lose. Have you ever forgotten your password on an important system? Have you ever recycled a computer and then realized that it still has old photos on it? Well, if you lose your digital wallet, there is no reset. There is no appeal. It's gone. So say, for instance, your computer gets hacked or it dies. That money is gone forever. This is a much bigger problem than you think. In January 2021, the New York Times ran an article titled "Tens of Billions Worth of Bitcoin Have Been Locked Up by People Who Forgot Their Key." There's also the legendary stories of people that mined a few Bitcoin a few years ago when Bitcoin was easy to mine on their old computer, and they've forgotten about it, and so they've thrown it out. And now they've realized that they effectively threw out hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no way to get it back. Number 11, theft. In an effort to avoid the serious complexity problems of using a digital wallet yourself, many people have turned to Bitcoin exchanges, which also will operate digital wallets for you. Just think of them as completely unregulated, pretty much fly-by-night banks that attempt to keep your Bitcoin safe. Now, a lot of these are serious companies, but a lot of them aren't. So this sounds like a great idea because you just give them money and it's converted into Bitcoin and saved for you. And that's the case unless the Bitcoin exchange is hacked or the owners or the staff are crooks. We have a fascinating story on Quadriga titled, "Did the crypto exchange boss fake his own death to steal all the money?" And there's a super famous story about Mt. Gox exchange, which was an early cryptocurrency exchange. And the owners claimed that they were hacked and that money's just gone. Nothing you can do. And then there's technology change. Do you remember 8-track tapes or video discs, way older than DVDs, or even regular cassette tapes? If so, you know that technology that seems to be entrenched one year is gone the next. Because there's no central body that's accountable for blockchain products like Bitcoin or NFTs. There's no one to manage that next transition. Do you really want your savings tied up for 2 years while some tech tries to work out the technology to migrate? Yeah, me either. Okay, here are some Bitcoin quotes that you might find interesting. If you have less money than Elon Musk, you should probably watch out. That was Bill Gates a couple weeks ago. The same people who thought Bitcoin was expensive at $100 now think it's fairly valued at $30,000. This guy called J.M. Rim. Anderson Cooper says, Bitcoin is well known, though little understood. And Warren Buffett says, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there. It's like a seashell or something. And that's not an investment to me. And then, of course, Donald J. Trump says, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, which are not money, and whose value is highly volatile based on thin air. And so the summary of all of this is that while these things are getting better, and there certainly is a future for blockchain technology for storing records, and there most definitely looks like a future for Bitcoin and NFTs as a fun place to gamble over the next few years. Just remember, it is gambling. But as we described, the value of items on the blockchain are arbitrary and prone to all kinds of abuses and problems. A Bitcoin, an art NFT, Ethereum, Litecoin, or any other digital currency is like the opposite of playing musical chairs with fake $1 million. When the music stops, you want to make sure that you are not the last person holding the last chair. Please put your comments below and we'll get back to you usually within a day. If you like this video, we'd really appreciate it if you would click like. And if you like this type of thing, please click subscribe. Both of those things make a huge difference in the Google algorithm. We mostly talk about electric vehicles, the energy industry, and high technology. And we take on both sides of issues. We really try to avoid politics and the random opinion claims of either fanboys or political partisans. We try to stick with facts. And if you have any other questions and concerns, you can always get a hold of us at www.partisanissues.com. Thanks!